It's time to send American troops home. That was the message from the US President Joe Biden, who's called for an end to the United States' longest war. And he set a date, September 11 this year. Joining me now live is US contributor, and that is Michael Ware. He joins me live from the United States. Michael Ware, good to see you. This goes against military advice, but it has been 20 long years in Afghanistan. What choices were available to Joe Biden?
Well, that's a great question, because President Biden goes through that and he says, given the choices, he finds that there's only one, and that's to get out. So he says it's time for the forever war to end. Now, when he says that, he should put in brackets for the forever war to end for America, NATO, Australia and the West, because I can tell you now, the war is only going to heat up for the Afghan people, because once the Western president leaves, the Taliban, which is already massively resurgent, is going to start storming across the country. Now, can they cut a peace deal with the existing Afghan government? Will they seek to return to their old ways and institute strict Islamic law? That's all up for question. But what's not up for question is that the Taliban are defeating the Afghan government forces on the ground. Even the US intelligence community says that. So they say the Afghan government will struggle to hold off the Taliban. But as President Biden says, you can't continue this cycle. He said this war was not meant to be intergenerational. American troops have gone and fought in Afghanistan only to see their children years later go and fight in the same conflict. He says we delivered justice to Osama Bin Laden a decade ago, and he said the reasons for remaining in Afghanistan since Bin Laden's death are increasingly unclear. And he said, 4 previous presidents, he's the 4th president to struggle with the reasons to stay there. No one wanted it to be a forever war, he said today, but no one thought now was the time to leave. Well, even under President Obama, then Vice President Biden thought it was time to leave. And now, against military advice, as you say, he's following his own gut and he's pulling the Western troops out.
Look, there's a long history here in Afghanistan. It's a very tribal place. People live day to day and they kind of side with whatever they see is their best means of survival, if I could put it so inarticulately. I mean, Russia knows this. Russia was in Afghanistan for a large part earlier last century, and after its withdrawal, things didn't go so well either. I think there has been some kind of unrealistic view of what can be left in terms of a legacy in Afghanistan. Would you agree?
Yeah, I actually would agree with that. I mean, we were never going to win this war. There was never any chance, not militarily. I mean, if you've ever been to Afghanistan, you need to see the landscape. It makes it so hard for an attacker, and so it puts the advantage so much with the defender, which in this case is the Taliban. It's, as you say, a tribal place riven by division. The Afghans have been fighting each other constantly for decades now, certainly since the Russian withdrawal in 1989. So there was never, ever going to be a clean and satisfying solution to this. But what the calculation finally came down to was this. It's purely about national self-interest. The only issue really at stake for the West is safe havens. If we pull out now, will terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State have safe havens again like they did under the Taliban before? That's really all we care about, because right now we're sacrificing women's rights, gains in educating girls, any attempt at creating a real lasting democracy, and certainly any attempt to curb the drug trade.
Yeah, there was some real progress there. I mean, I went there for all of 2 weeks, about 10 years ago, and there was progress being made. you hear troops talk about having the local forces Afghan ready. So realising that, Western standards were very different to those in Afghanistan. But I guess so many lives lost, both Australian soldiers, US soldiers and Afghan lives. Are we right to sit here, Michael, and ask, for what?
Well, yeah, that's a fair question. I mean, the Afghans love being Afghan, and nothing's ever going to change that. For someone who lived there for almost 2 years, I can tell you, once you get outside the cities, it's almost living in the Old Testament. Take away the internal combustion engine and the AK-47 and it's biblical times. Men in some of these remote villages have never travelled further than outside their own valley their entire lives. It's a completely different form of human existence that we know. But the problem is the grotesque 9/11 attacks started there. So the West was forced to answer. We had to remove the Taliban because they continued to give Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden safe haven. The problem is, given the nature of Afghanistan and the fact that it's so deeply mired in the past, there's really no answer to the problems that are created by a vacuum.
Michael, it's a tough one, but we always love your insights on the program, so I appreciate your time.